Welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. We have a great presentation for you this evening, and we're pretty excited about it. So, my name is Claire Eagle. I'm the Community Engagement Manager here at Historic New Harmony. Historic New Harmony is a unified program of the University of Southern Indiana and the Indiana State Museum and Historic Sites. As a part of the University of Southern Indiana, we work to kind of bridge the town of New Harmony and the university together. And we're thankful for this series for being able to do so. So this Crossroads Change in Rural America series was to be a part of the Crossroads exhibit that we were hosting in partnership with Indiana Humanities and Museum on Main Street this past summer. Unfortunately, due to the shutdown and of course COVID-19, we did have to cancel that exhibit, but we are going forward with this series for several reasons. And the first is being that the topics covered in the speaker series by our very own USI faculty, staff, and students are just as relevant today as we continue to find our place in this new socially distanced world. So we wanted to be able to still further connect USI and New Harmony, as well as present the rural topics of Crossroads in a way that related to Southern Indiana. So a few housekeeping things before we continue. Please keep yourself muted as Cassidy gives her presentation. If you have questions or comments as she presents, you can share those with us in the chat feature, and we will make sure to get those to her during our Q&A session at the end. Additionally, this presentation is being recorded, so if you have to leave early or if you're having technical difficulties, it will be up on our Historic New Harmony playlist on the USI YouTube page within the next 2 to 3 days, depending on how quickly we can get it up. All right. So Cassidy actually became involved in Historic New Harmony about a year and a half ago. She was working part-time at the Athenaeum as a museum aide and ended up coming to us with an internship this past spring. She actually put in quite a bit of work into our new guided tour books. If you haven't seen those yet, those are available in our museum shop. And Cassidy did a lot of work for those, so we're very grateful for that. She also graduated in May of this year with her Bachelor's of Science in History from USI. And hoping to pursue a career in public history, she is once again a USI student working towards her MA in Liberal Studies with a concentration in history. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give the floor to Cassidy.
Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that. Thank you, Claire, and thank everyone for coming. I'm really happy that people are actually here. I was kind of scared that nobody would show up. As Claire said, my name's Cassidy Schaefer. I'm a grad student at USI, and I graduated this past spring with my bachelor's. When Claire first told me about this speaker series, I really wanted to find something that would work for it. I thought it would be a really cool opportunity. But I wasn't really sure what to do, so I started kind of thinking back to all my papers that I had written during my undergrad at USI, and I remembered that I had done a paper about the Mercury 7, and then I remembered that Gus Grissom was from Mitchell, Indiana. And from there, I kind of had some questions. I was like, well, what was his upbringing like? How did he get to where he was? How were his parents growing up different than how he grew up? So those questions kind of helped evolve this presentation. So I will start, maybe. Okay, so the questions that I hoped to learn through my research was how was Gus Grissom's upbringing different from that of his father and his mother? How was the upbringing of his sons different than his? And how did growing up in rural Indiana help shape the man that he would become? I'm sure most people that have like tuned in tonight probably know who Gus was. But for those who don't, I will go through a little short snippet about why he's so famous. Gus was one of America's first astronauts. He was a part of a group called Mercury 7. Mercury 7 included Lieutenant Colonel John Glenn of the U.S. Marine Corps, Captain Leroy Gordon Cooper Jr., or Gordo as he went by. He was with the United States Air Force. Lieutenant Malcolm Scott Carpenter of the U.S. Navy. Lieutenant Commander Alan Shepard Jr. of the U.S. Navy. Lieutenant Commander Walter Marty Schira. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that right. I never can pronounce his last name. Jr. He went by Wally of the U.S. Navy. And then Captain Donald Kent Slayton, or Deke, as he went by, of the United States Air Force. And of course, Lieutenant Colonel Virgil Ivan Grissom, or Gus, of the United States Air Force. These 7 men made up the Mercury 7 and kind of became national celebrities like overnight when they were announced. So what was Gus's astronaut career like? Like I said, he was part of the Mercury 7. Gus was actually the second American in space. The first was Alan Shepard. And when his flight went well until the splashdown. I'm sure, as most of you know, when he splashed down, unexpectedly the hatch blew on the capsule and the capsule started filling with water. He was fighting to stay afloat and stay alive. He almost drowned. He was eventually able to swim out of the capsule, and the helicopter was struggling to keep the capsule above water. Eventually, they had to let it go because there was no saving it. It had too much water in it. Gus was fine, though, which is great. But some people were concerned that Gus blew the hatch himself. So there was an investigation to see if maybe he panicked when he hit the water and blew the hatch prematurely. After the investigation, though, they did find that it was a malfunction and that Gus did not prematurely blow the hatch, that the hatch blew on its own. So he was cleared of that. Back to Alan Shepard, after his flight, there was a huge parade. His whole family was there, and him and his wife were invited to the White House to meet President Kennedy and the First Lady. But after Gus, there was no parade. There was no. Him and Betty were not invited to meet JFK and Jackie. And this was Gus took this really hard because he felt like he was being punished for something that wasn't his fault. And Betty also took it very hard because she really wanted to meet Jackie. After the Mercury flight, he did not fly again until Gemini. But this flight went a lot better than the first one. The flight went off without a hitch. Splashdown was perfect. He did nickname his Gemini capsule Molly Brown, after the unsinkable Molly Brown, which the people at NASA, they didn't really like that. They thought that was in bad taste. But Gus was insistent on it. He gave them 2 options. He said, Molly Brown or Titanic. So they went with the lesser of 2 evils, I would assume, and let him name the capsule Molly Brown. After that, he worked with NASA all the way through the Apollo project, and he was set to go back up into space for Apollo 1. Unfortunately, on January 27th, 1967, during a pre-flight testing, Gus, along with astronauts Roger Chaffee and Ed White, ended up dying in an accident. And he is buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. So that's his astronaut career, which ends in a very sad way, a very tragic way. But Gus did a lot for the American space program. So to get to his upbringing a little bit more and talk about how he got there, Gus was born on April 3rd, 1926 in Mitchell, Indiana. And you can see on the map from Evansville to Mitchell, it's almost a 2-hour drive. And moving on to his parents, Dennis Grissom, his father, was born October 14th, 1903. His mother, Cecil Grissom, which her name I had seen spelled 3 different ways. I had seen it spelled Cecil, I had seen it spelled Cecilia, and Cecile. I actually got to go visit Gus's home up in Mitchell and take a tour because it is a museum now, and they told me that it is pronounced Cecil, so I'm glad that I got that cleared up because I wasn't sure. They're both from Herrin, Indiana, which is about a 16-minute drive from Mitchell, as you can see on the map there. His parents walked to school with each other every day, and they were eventually married in 1924. Their family was far from wealthy. Being married and raising children during the Depression era was really hard, but his father was able to keep his job throughout the Depression and was able to keep food on the table and a roof over the family's heads. They had 4 children, as the pictures in the picture. You can see Virgil, which is Gus, April 3rd, 1926. Wilma, their daughter, came next. She was born in 1928. Then Norman in 1930, and finally Lowell in 1934. He did have another sister, but she passed away, I believe, due to complications after birth. And then move on. This is a picture of the 1940 census that is very hard to read for you guys. I'm really sorry about that, but I took some notes on it, so I'll be able to tell you what's happening. This box down here that I put around on the picture, that it shows Gus and his family. The black line is where his father would be, and then his mother, him, and the rest of his siblings. Where the box ends, the column is saying what grade level the person last attended for school, and his parents both had only an 8th grade education. If you look further, well, if you could see it, it's very small, but if you would be able to see it, if you look further to the right, it does list occupation. His father's the only one with an occupation at this point, because in 1940, Gus would have been 14. Yeah. And his occupation is listed as signal helper. And then, even more over towards the right, it does list their income for 1939. And next to Gus's father's name, it says $1,000 for the whole year of 1939. So they were not wealthy by any means. They definitely didn't have very much money, but his dad worked hard to make sure that they had what they needed. This is a photograph of the actual house in Mitchell. And Dennis, his father, worked for the railroad as a signalman, which he would travel from Washington to Seymour to maintain the signals on the railroad, which I wasn't really sure what that was, so I did look it up. And basically, they would make sure that all the railways were going the way that they needed to go, and they didn't need maintenance or anything like that. His mother was a homemaker, so she just worked out of the home. She canned food, and they did raise a garden at the house. The next few slides are going to be pictures of the inside of the house from my visit to Mitchell. They have kept the house pretty much as it would have been back whenever Gus lived there. The photo you're seeing right now is their living area, the living room. You can see the piano was the piano that had the pictures of the 4 of them on it. That's in the living room at the house. And then over towards the right of the picture, there is like a white curtain that actually is all that separates the living area from his parents' bedroom. So not a whole lot of privacy. And then this is a picture of his parents' bedroom. Like I said, not a lot of privacy. Over to the left, which you can't see it, there would be there was that curtain that separated the two. And this is a picture of what would have been Gus's bedroom. He would have shared this with one of his brothers, and eventually he did end up start sleeping out on the couch because as he got older. And his bedroom was separated by one door between his parents' bedrooms, so not a whole lot of privacy at all. And on his bed, they have a bunch of clippings from newspapers from whenever he was an astronaut and what the Mitchell papers would print about him. The next few pictures are of their kitchen, and they kept the kitchen is probably the most like what it would have looked like back then. The middle picture with the wall with the game, that wall would have butted up right against Gus's bedroom. And then the picture all the way to the right, the stove is different, is not the same stove, but it's very similar to the one that they would have used. Everything in the house that they could save, they did save to put into the museum, which is really, really cool. These are pictures of like the back porch area. They've turned it into now a little memorabilia site. So they have the pictures of Gus, and they have some more newspaper clippings. The yellow dress that you see is actually a dress that his wife did wear at one point, and then that is his actual uniform as well. And then they have a bunch of t-shirts that you could buy, which I'm really upset with myself that I didn't buy one whenever I was there because I really wanted to wear it for this presentation, but it's okay. But so. And then these are some pictures of the family. The left side, you have his parents, and then he is the taller boy, and then Wilma, and then Norman. And then the right picture, I love this picture because you have his parents holding Norman, and then Wilma just standing there on the ground, and that's Gus up there on the tire, just hanging out. Doesn't look happy at all to be in this picture. Okay, so a little bit about his siblings. I couldn't find a whole lot of information about where they ended up or how they ended up where they ended up, but so we have a little bit of information. Wilma ended up marrying a railroad man just like her father, and she moved to West Virginia. Norman worked for the newspaper in Mitchell, and he now lives in Florida. And then Lowell graduated from Indiana University, and he now lives in St. Louis. Lowell actually has been very active in the boyhood home in Mitchell. He has come back and visited. He's given talks. They do a meeting with an astronaut every year, and he always attends that. He's been very, very active. Okay, so this picture, well, I'll go over this first. Gus's love of flying started at a really early age. When he was like 7 or 8 years old, a Barnstormer plane landed near the high school that he would eventually attend. And he just was fascinated by planes and flying in general. So I couldn't find a good picture of like a Barnstormer up close. So this is the one I found. This is of Bessie Coleman. So nothing to do with Gus, but that's a Barnstormer for those of you who didn't know what a Barnstormer plane is. When he was a little bit older and he could drive or he could find a ride, he would actually go to Vincennes to an airfield, and he would pay to fly with a pilot there because he just wanted to be in the air. That was his ultimate goal, was to become a pilot. Let's see. So sports or Boy Scouts. Gus himself said many times that he was too small to play high school sports, but he did find that he loved Boy Scouts. And he was not a straight A student. He excelled in math, but he is quoted as saying he was not much of a whiz in school. Basically, he got the grades he needed to get to graduate from high school. Betty Moore is who would become Betty Grissom later on. He met her when he was a sophomore in high school and she was a freshman. And he has said that as soon as he met her, he knew that she was the girl for him. He worked all throughout school to make money. He would deliver newspapers twice a day. He would do that all year round, wind, rain, snow, anything. He would be delivering newspapers. During the summer, he would try to find work at some local orchards that were around, and he would help pick peaches, cherries, really anything that they needed him to do. And Gus really had two things on his mind. One was flying, and two was Betty. And any money that he made, he would use to take her out on dates. But like Gus, or like his parents, Gus knew the value of hard work and knew that things weren't just going to be handed to him. So he knew that if he wanted to achieve his goal of flying, he was going to have to buckle down and really work for it. So he wanted to be a pilot so bad, he registered to be an aviation cadet for World War II, and he reported for duty in August of 1944 after he graduated high school. In 1945, he took a short leave of absence and came home to marry Betty. And from there, he was hoping to be able to go on his combat missions and complete his flight training. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but Japan surrendered before he could receive his wings and finish his flight training. And he was discharged from the service in November of 1945. So after he was discharged, he came back to Mitchell, and he worked some odd jobs here and there, kind of trying to find something that he was passionate about, but he couldn't get flying out of his head. So he decided he wanted to go back to school, and he enrolled in Purdue University, and he graduated from Purdue in 1950 with a degree in mechanical engineering, which for someone who was not a whiz in school, that's pretty impressive. He went to school during the day, and then with a little bit of help from his GI Bill, he paid for his school. That didn't cover all of the costs though, so Gus would go to school during the day and he would go to work at night. And Betty also got a job as a long distance phone operator to help pay for his college. And he has also been quoted saying that she made my degree possible. So he really gave credit to Betty for helping him get through school. And it's really funny. Lowell and him always had like a back and forth because he went to Purdue and Lowell went to IU, and the whole thing between Purdue and IU. After he graduated, he still couldn't get flying out of his head. So he decided to re-enlist in the Air Force and complete his flight training, and he finally won his wings. Soon after that, his first son, Scott, was born in 1950. Gus was sent to Korea soon after that, and he completed 100 combat missions in Korea. He then put in to have 25 more missions, but he was denied those, and he was sent back to the States. While he was on duty, though, he did earn an Air Medal and the Distinguished Flying Cross. Back home, after he was sent back to the States, he became a flight instructor, training new cadets, and he started logging more flight hours for himself. He was just going to keep getting better and better at flying. As far as he was concerned, he wasn't going to let not being in the service hinder him in any way. His second son, Mark, was born in 1953. And it was after Mark was born that Gus decided he wanted to challenge himself a little bit more. Flying was great, but he decided he wanted to become a test pilot, which, once again, I didn't know what a test pilot was, so I had to look that up. Test pilots they actually test new planes that are right out of production. So it's a very dangerous job, because if something goes wrong with one of those planes, it's not good. So a very dangerous job. But he received his test pilot license in 1957. And from there, Gus, he flew a lot of planes in his time as a test pilot. After some years as a test pilot, he was summoned to Washington, D.C. for a top secret meeting. When he was there, he found out that he was one of 110 military test pilots whose credential had earned themselves an invitation to learn about America's growing space program, and specifically Project Mercury. When Gus saw the competition, he didn't think that he had a chance. He really thought that he blew all the tests that they were giving him. He didn't think that he measured up to any of the guys. So he was very surprised to be when they told him he was going to be a Mercury 7 astronaut. He got that call on April 13th, 1959. So that brings us back to where we started. So just a quick recap, he is told that he was chosen, and from there he is the second American in space. He names his Gemini flight Molly Brown, and then he unfortunately, in a tragic accident, passes away on Apollo 1. So looking at these questions again, how was Gus's upbringing different from that of his father and mother? Well, Gus's parents both only had an 8th grade education, while Gus graduated from college and became an astronaut. And his parents instilled in him that hard work is what makes goals happen and what helps you achieve your dreams. His parents did not have very much money. I don't know exactly what the astronauts were making back then, but I'm sure he was making more money than his parents were. And then how was the upbringing of his sons different than his? When Gus was announced that he was going to be a Mercury 7 astronaut, his sons were 9 and 6. So their upbringing was way different than his father's. First, he was a military man, so they were moving all the time. And second, overnight, their family became American royalty, basically. Everyone wanted to know what Betty would cook for Gus when he came home, and everyone wanted to know what their sons were doing. And so they grew up kind of in the spotlight. I think it's kind of cool. I feel like the Mercury 7 astronauts were kind of America's very first reality stars. Like, they didn't have their own TV show, but they had Life magazines, articles written about them almost every issue, and they just the American public loved them and couldn't get enough of the space race. And finally, how did growing up in rural Indiana help shape the man that he would become? Like I said, it was really instilled in him from a very early age that hard work is what helps people reach their goals. And so he knew that he had to work his butt off to get where he wanted. He wanted to become a pilot, and he never let that dream die. And it was always in the back of his head that he wanted to be a pilot, and so that's what he did. And growing up in a family where you don't have very much really helped him, because he knew, even with what little he did have, that he could make that dream possible. Okay. And then I would personally like to thank the Gus Grissom Boyhood Home, because they really opened up my research tremendously because I was having a lot of trouble. I had found some census records, but other than that, I wasn't really getting an inside view into what Gus's life was like at home. And then I would also like to thank Claire and everyone at Historic New Harmony because I didn't think I was going to get chosen for this, and I was really happy when I did, and it's been really, really cool, and I was very excited. And I would also like to thank my family for everyone being so great dealing with my stress throughout this whole thing because I've been very nervous. So now I would like to open it up to questions if anybody has any.
I'll give a little bit if people would like to add them in our chat. I do have a few that I kind of came up with as I was listening to you.
Okay.
First of all, I really liked that you likened them to America's First reality stars.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, you know, who did not live that don't realize the constant press that was on the space program because it was so novel and so new that, you know, it's weird to think about the fact that everyone was wondering what Betty was cooking him when he was home for dinner. Like that's, you know, now it seems normal in our reality driven world, but back then I'm sure it was really weird. Did his sons go to college?
Oh, actually, yes. Sorry, I actually meant to touch on that. They both became pilots. They went to college and they both followed in his footsteps and became pilots. One, I think Scott flies more commercially. I'm not really sure in what aspect Mark is flying, but I know they both became pilots.
And how old were they when Gus unfortunately passed away in Apollo 1?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure off the top of my head, actually.
So when Gus passed away, did Betty move them back to Indiana? Did his sons grow up in Indiana, or were they somewhere else?
As far as I know, she stayed where they were in Houston, I believe, for a while, and then I don't think they ever moved back to Indiana, though.
I had another question. So I know this came out of a project about the Mercury 7. I guess he was so shocked that he was chosen as one of the Mercury 7. Do you know anything about how the 7 were chosen?
I know that they put them through some like physical testing, and they really looked at their different experiences as a pilot. But other than that, I'm not really sure how the decision was made.
It's probably classified information.
Yeah, but I know that because he, in some of the stuff I read about whenever he was chosen, he had said that he was very surprised with how he felt like he did on like the physical exams and stuff, that he just felt like he didn't measure up at all to some of the other contestants for it. So
I think that's all the questions I have. So we'll give another moment or two, see if anyone has any additional ones. Please share those in the chat if you wouldn't mind. But thank you, Cassidy. That was really interesting. I didn't know much about the Mercury 7, so I learned something new. Mm-hmm. All right. So Ken did just comment in the chat that yes, so all of early on, all astronauts came from the military, which was true. I know they were all like pilots and things like that. But to go from, I think you said it was 110 that had been like invited to the 7 that were chosen, was very interesting. It's also interesting as kind of I think about it now that while Gus is obviously famous, he wasn't really one of the ones that kind of got, you know, when people think about the Mercury 7, I feel like everyone just goes to John Glenn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, John Glenn, absolutely. And then Scott Carpenter, I feel like is more up there as well. But yeah, he's definitely not. I feel like if you're not from Indiana, you might not really know who he is. But he was an Indiana boy, so all the Hoosiers know him.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that's the end. So I'm gonna, if you wouldn't mind stopping your screen share, I'm gonna share mine.
Okay.
and kind of give my closing here. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Cassidy. It was a fantastic presentation. I just want to talk a little bit about what we have upcoming in our Crossroads series. So this is only the second presentation, so we still have several more that go on into November. So our next one is a USI professor, Dr. Matthew J. Henke. He's a political science professor, and he is going to present the urban-rural divide in our American political system, which I think is going to be very fascinating as we go into the election and kind of talk about more urban and rural topics. Then on Thursday, October 8th at 6:30, we have Dr. Terry Jett. Now, Dr. Terry Jett is actually from Butler University. She is an associate professor of political science and special assistant to the provost for diversity and inclusivity at the university. And she's going to be presenting Food Connects Us All, which is more about the sharp kind of line between urban and rural food sources and how those differ and how those connect us as well. So finally, we do ask that you stay connected with us. Of course, we have our monthly e-newsletter, which our September edition will be going out in the next few days. So if you haven't already signed up for that, you can sign up for it at usi.edu/inharmony, or you can go to our Facebook page. There's a pinned post at the top that'll take you to our sign up page for it. That's the best way to kind of see our upcoming events, see what's going on, see what we got in the museum shop, and it's a great way to stay informed. Additionally, you can follow us on all social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, as well as Twitter. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have a playlist on the USI YouTube channel where we will post all of these speakers, all of these recordings. But additionally, we have recordings of our previous series we did this past summer, the virtual community conversations, which are great presentations as well. And I definitely encourage you to go watch those. And then finally, for more information on this speaker series, on our upcoming presentations, you can visit usi.edu/crossroads speakers. Additionally, we will have registration open for the next few presentations in the next few days. And then finally, of course, we do hope that you will help Historic New Harmony continue its historic preservation efforts, educational programming, and more with your charitable gift to the USI Foundation. You can make your gift securely online at usi.edu/online giving, or by calling the foundation, which their number is on their website as well. So we do thank you for any gift you might make.
Cassidy, just a quick well done. And I did have one question before we all leave. So just doing a deep dive on a country boy from Indiana, how did it impact you? And so do you find yourself at dinner parties talking about Gus and educating people about this incredible life?
Actually, yeah. I kept talking to my family about it, and as well as some of my friends, and I'm like, why am I doing this? You're going to hear about it because you're going to attend the thingy. But yeah, it's definitely, because I wasn't really sure about, I knew who he was, but I didn't know very much about him before this. I actually, even before I wrote the Mercury 7 paper, I got onto the Mercury 7 because I read a book called The Astronaut's Wives Club. And that's how kind of all the fascination with the space race and the space program kind of happened for me. So being a history person, I talk about history whenever I can. So it's probably a little annoying, but yeah, I definitely talk to a bunch of people about it.
Well, your passion definitely comes through. Thank you for sharing it with us tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a great evening. Bye.